Howdy everyone, it's Parker again with part 2 of the series on vaccine mandates. The first part of this series concerned itself with informed consent the consent part of informed consent, and we are now going to talk about the informed part. I have fewer things to talk about here, so this hopefully should be shorter, and certainly, certainly, as certain as I can be, this will be the final part of this series. Now, as we were talking about in part 1, informed consent is an absolute and unalienable precondition for administering a medication of any kind. And we talked about all of the defects in consent that have existed for people who have gotten vaccinated and who are about to be vaccinated as a result of federal mandates and not the direction of their own conscience. But now I'd like to talk about the defects in information that people have received about this vaccine. Now, certainly there is some form of document that you have to sign in order to get vaccinated. There's certainly some things that your healthcare provider prior to vaccinating you will inform you of. Right. It's not that there is no information. And I'm not saying that information is grossly insufficient even. I'm primarily talking about things that have been said by healthcare experts in the federal government especially. People like Dr. Fauci, people like the officials at the CDC and the FDA. And it's not in everything that they've said, but there are certain lines that they have towed that are simply inconsistent with the reality of the situation. And I don't know. Look, I can't spell immunology. Okay, these people know way more than I do about immunology. But I can read. And so if they say something that directly contradicts what we know to be true from the documentation that their own agencies have released, that's a problem. So let's get into it. I have in front of me the vaccine information fact sheet for recipients and caregivers about Comirnaty and Pfizer BioNTech. So, let's just back up a minute. In August, the FDA approved their first COVID vaccine. And it was said by many people, and I'm not going to pull up quotes because there's a lot of them, and I don't want to privilege some of them over others because they're all equally responsible for this misinformation. News anchors, health officials, government officials, of a non-health variety, an executive variety in particular, say the president, I don't know, said that the Pfizer vaccine is now FDA approved. No, it's not. The Pfizer BioNTech vaccine that has been administered to Americans thus far, it's October 14th, every dose of the Pfizer vaccine that has been administered in the United States up into and including this date has not been FDA approved. What has been FDA approved is the Comirnaty vaccine. Well, what's the Comirnaty vaccine? This document answers exactly that question. What is Comirnaty and how is it related to the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine? It reads, Comirnaty and the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine have the same formulation and can be used interchangeably to provide the COVID-19 vaccination series. Now, that may or may not be true. I am not saying it is not true. What I am saying, what I'm interested in focusing on is in the fine print below the footnote, or according to the footnote that is attached to that sentence. Footnote 1 reads, the licensed vaccine has the same formulation as the emergency use authorized vaccine, and the product can be used interchangeably to provide the vaccination series without presenting any safety or effectiveness concerns. Here's the key part. The products are legally distinct with certain differences that do not impact safety or effectiveness. To be clear, the Comirnaty vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, this document says, are of the same formulation and can be used interchangeably, but they are legally distinct. They're legally distinct. So if we're talking about the law, which as a result of mandates, we are, the law shouldn't have anything to do with someone being made to take a vaccine, but that's where we're at. So the law is relevant and needs to be the perspective from which we consider mandates. Legally, no vaccine administered in the United States thus far has been approved by the FDA. Authorized, yes, but not approved, and those are very, very different. In addition to that, the approval letter for the Comirnaty vaccine, and this is something that I actually didn't even realize until I was looking into it for the purposes of this particular episode. The approval letter, the letter from the FDA to Pfizer BioNTech, who manufactures the Comirnaty vaccine. It's marketed under the name Comirnaty. That's not a company. It's a brand. It's essentially it's a marketing name. The letter has post-marketing requirements. It reads, among other things, therefore, based on appropriate scientific data, we have determined that you are required to conduct the following studies. And then there is an enumeration of several studies that are required. One of these study completions is in June of 2022. Another study will be completed in March of 2024. Another study will be completed in December of 2026. 2026! Which study is that, I wonder? Well, let's look. It's study C4591036, which is a prospective cohort study with at least 5 years of follow-up for potential long-term sequelae. Sequelae. That's too Latin for me. Of myocarditis after vaccination. This is exactly what I'm worried about with this vaccine most for myself, because I am a young man. And regardless of whether I'm vaccinated or not, I'm worried about it, because even if I get vaccinated and don't have any immediate symptoms of myocarditis, it might be subclinical. I might have a subclinical case of myocarditis, and untreated myocarditis, as it turns out, this might be news to you. It's a bad thing. And so the FDA has ordered the manufacturer of this vaccine to study it for at least 5 years to follow up on people who get it for the potential of long-term myocarditis problems. Now, given that I and millions of other people are in that risk category, that's men under 40, by the way, I'd like to see the results of that study. And unless you're digging around in FDA documents like an absolute nerd, you wouldn't even know that it's being conducted, that the FDA has ordered it to be conducted in the approval letter. And this, by the way, is for a vaccine that is not available in the United States. Legally speaking, medically speaking, the formulation, if the FDA is not in any way misleading, and I'm not saying that they are, I'll get into why this doesn't make any sense to me, but legally speaking, this vaccine, which has been approved by the FDA, still requires studies to be done on it for 5 years from now. The study won't be done until December of 2026. The report will not be submitted until May of 27. I should like to see the report And I think that I am being entirely reasonable in my expectation of that, seeing as myocarditis doesn't look like fun. Now, let's assume for a moment that the FDA is entirely trustworthy and the Comirnaty vaccine is, in fact, exactly the same as the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine that you get today if you go and get the Pfizer vaccine. You go and get the Pfizer vaccine today, you're not getting Comirnaty, you're not getting this approved one, you're getting an emergency use authorization vaccine. Okay, but let's just say that they're exactly the same. Why would the FDA need to approve one and not the other? Why is there this second vaccine now that's of the exact same formulation, the exact same kind, and is manufactured by the same company? Why does there need to be a second vaccine which gets approved, as opposed to just approving the one that has been administered in the United States already? Now, maybe there's a good answer for that. But people have asked the FDA, hey, FDA, why didn't you just approve the existing vaccine? Why do we have to invent this new vaccine out of thin air so we can approve that one? That has been asked of the FDA and they have not answered. So, color me skeptical, because when things like that happen that are weird and don't intuitively make sense, and the officials responsible don't answer questions, I get skittish. A lot of people get skittish, especially when you're in the risk category, the highest risk category for one of the more lethal side effects. Now, let me be very clear. I'm not saying the risk of myocarditis is high. I'm saying that of the side effects that exist for this vaccine, myocarditis is one of the most of the significant side effects, not, injection site pain, but real medical conditions. Of those, myocarditis is the most common, and it presents, when it does, most commonly in men under 40, especially men, well, especially teenage boys, but essentially younger men is the point. I've been saying this whole time, I want long-term studies. As it turns out, the FDA agrees with me. Who knew that I was such a great immunologist? Been taking pages out of my book. Okay, enough on that. The second part of this I want to get into is going to be very brief because it's very simple to understand, and we all understand it implicitly whether we agree with it or don't. This is the Twitter page I have in front of me of Dr. Zev Zelenko. It says account suspended. This is the Twitter page of a one Alex Berenson, who is doing a lot of, I don't actually know that he's a credentialed physician at all, but he was doing a lot of research into coronavirus and was posting a lot of CDC and FDA documentation, the likes of which I'm doing right now. Was discussing it, asking questions, the kinds of questions I'm asking, the kinds of questions that millions of Americans are asking. Also account suspended. And this, finally, this is the YouTube link for a video featuring Dr. Peter McCullough, who is a cardiologist and epidemiologist from Texas, who has been very prolific in his public appearances and thoughts that he has expressed concerning COVID vaccines and therapeutics. The first and the last of these are especially alarming to me. These are credentialed medical professionals. These people not only have the licensing, they're in the field. They see patients. Okay, there's a lot of doctors you can find on both sides of the aisle, by the way. You have Fauci, then like what you would call the pro-vaccine, pro-mandate side. And then you have someone like, I don't know, who's that guy's always on Tucker? Mark Siegel. sort of what I guess you call right-wing doctor. I don't know. I've been wrong before. You know what? I'm not even going to say that about Mark Siegel because I don't know that Dr. Siegel doesn't see patients. He might. Fauci definitely does not. The last time he was in an exam room with a patient was like in the Eisenhower administration or some nonsense. The point is, these are physicians in the field. These are physicians in the field who have things to say, and we're kicking them off of social media. The website of the frontline doctors had their website hosting pulled out from under them. They had to get it hosted elsewhere. This kind of thing has happened a lot. I can give more examples if I had some queued up. We are rejecting medical advice and opinion and thought that does not conform to the Biden orthodoxy. If it is not in concordance with the Biden administration and its officials, it is heterodoxy and shall be promptly removed from the public square. How exactly is it possible to have science without discussion and debate? I'm actually asking. As far as I'm concerned, there is no such thing. How can we have informed consent if everyone who has anything to say that is not perfectly in lockstep with the present administration and its agenda concerning mandates, if all of those people who have any dissenting opinion are promptly removed from the online public square, in what sense exactly can people get informed? They can be propagandized, but they can't be informed. Well, not nearly as easily. There's a lot of friction to being informed. So this is not as strict of a violation of informed consent as we discussed in part 1, or even as we discussed just now with the Comirnaty versus Pfizer vaccine problem and the lie of FDA authorization. But culturally, it is absolutely relevant because there are absolutely people who might have had their mind altered about whether they were going to choose to get vaccinated if they were aware of medical dissent. I don't know how many people I have heard say the science is settled. The medical community is all on the same page. They're not. Rampant debate is occurring. But everyone on one side of the aisle is getting no airtime, is getting ejected from social media websites, is getting slandered everywhere that they can be. I mean, pull up the Wikipedia page for these people. It's horrific. Now, maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're wrong. I'm not saying they're right. I'm saying if you don't invite them to the table, no discussion occurs. And if you're not going to allow a discussion to occur, I don't know how you can possibly say that people have the ability to be properly informed. That's all I have for this series on vaccines. Let me know what you all think. And next time, we will get Mason in on this discussion because I know that he has lots of things to say. But that's all for now. Thanks for listening. We'll catch y'all next time. This has been Battle Royale.